You're kneeling in the dirt. It's cold. Your hands are shaking, and not from the wind. Somewhere out in the dark, past the edge of the firelight, something moved. You heard it, a branch, a breath that wasn't yours. Your child is sleeping behind you, wrapped in hide, and there's nothing between them and the teeth in that darkness except you, a spear, and a fire that's slowly dying. You don't have a weapon strong enough. You don't have walls. You don't have help coming. So you do the only thing left. You look up at the black sky, at the stars you can't name, at the mountains that were here long before you and will be here long after, and you start to speak. Not to your child, not to yourself, to something bigger, something you hope is listening. And in that moment, you become the first thing no other animal on Earth has ever been, a creature that prays. Today, you can walk past a 1,000-year-old cathedral and barely glance up. Faith, for a lot of people, is a Sunday thing, a wedding thing, a funeral thing. Something you scroll past, argue about online, or forget entirely between Tuesdays. It's optional, comfortable. Background noise in a world where the lights stay on and the food shows up and nothing in the dark is hunting you. But here's the thing. For your ancestors, looking up and reaching out to the unseen wasn't a lifestyle choice. It wasn't philosophy. It was survival gear. As real to them as a sharpened flint or a full water skin. When you don't understand why the sky throws lightning, why the herds vanish, why your baby burns with fever and dies before morning, you need an explanation. You need somewhere to put the terror. You need to believe someone, somewhere, can be bargained with. Prayer wasn't weakness. It was one of the first tools we ever built. And it lived inside the skull, not the hand. This is the story of the exact moment our species stopped just reacting to the world and started reaching beyond it. The birth of belief, buried in bones, ochre, and graves older than farming, older than cities, older than almost everything you think of as human. So when did we first pray? Nobody filmed it. There's no diary. But belief leaves fingerprints, and there are 3 of them. The first one is death. Specifically, the way we started treating our dead. Around 100,000 years ago at Qafzeh Cave in modern Israel, someone buried a young human with deliberate care, and beside the body, the antlers of a red deer, placed there on purpose. Animals don't do this. Animals walk away from their dead, but these people stopped. They dug. They arranged. They gave a gift to a corpse that couldn't eat it. Picture that grave, the small skeleton, the pale curve of antler resting against the ribs, dirt packed by grieving hands. That's not instinct. That's a bet that death isn't the end. The second one is fear you can't fight. Thunder, eclipses, a river that floods and drowns the whole valley in a night. Your muscles are useless against the sky. You can't stab a storm. So the mind does something wild. It decides the storm has a will, a mood, a face. At Bhimbetka in central India, rock shelters hold paintings stretching back tens of thousands of years, and researchers believe some of the swirling figures represent forces the painters were trying to reach or appease. Imagine crouching in a rock overhang while the world floods, pressing red pigment to stone, begging the water to stop. That's the second fingerprint, turning helplessness into a conversation. And the third one, maybe the strangest, is the dead who wouldn't stay dead. Long before Israel, back around 300,000 years ago, something happened at a site in South Africa called Rising Star Cave. Deep in a nearly unreachable chamber, researchers found the bones of a small-brained human relative, Homo naledi, apparently placed there on purpose, deliberately, in the dark, past passages so tight you have to exhale to fit through. The lead researcher, Lee Berger, argues they were carrying their dead into that blackness for a reason. Picture squeezing through cold rock in total darkness, a body on your back, for no reason survival can explain. That's the oldest fingerprint of all, and it terrifies the experts. But belief needs an anchor, something you can hold, something you can leave in a grave. Because a thought in your head dies with you, but an object outlives the hand that carved it. That's the real engine of early religion. Symbols. The moment a human took a lump of red ochre and ground it into powder and smeared it on a body, They crossed a line no animal has ever crossed. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, around 77,000 years ago, someone engraved a piece of ochre with a careful crosshatch pattern, the oldest known drawing on Earth. It doesn't feed you. It doesn't warm you. It means something. And here's where the physical evidence gets impossible to argue with. When they buried people at Sungir in Russia 34,000 years ago, they didn't just dig a hole. They covered 2 children in over 13,000 hand-carved ivory beads. Beads that would have taken thousands of hours to make. You don't spend thousands of hours decorating a corpse unless you believe that corpse is going somewhere. That's not decoration. That's a passport. Lose fire and you freeze. Lose this belief, and you lose the one thing that let humans face the dark without breaking. Now here's the part nobody talks about. That fear, that grief, that desperate reaching upward. It didn't just comfort people. It accidentally built civilization. Think about it. To pray together, you need to gather. To gather, you need to agree on a story. And the moment 100 strangers believe the same invisible thing, you can trust people you've never met. That's the glue that lets tribes become towns and towns become nations. Belief didn't slow humans down. It scaled us up. And it may have literally moved stone. At Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, around 11,600 years ago, hunter-gatherers with no metal, no wheel, and no pottery hauled 20-ton pillars into massive stone rings carved with foxes, scorpions, and vultures. There's no city there. No farms came first. Just a temple, which flips the whole story on its head. We used to think humans settled down to farm, then built temples. But Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite, that the urge to worship came first, and farming came after, just to feed the crowds who kept showing up to pray. And once you know what to look for, the fingerprints are everywhere. Start at Shanidar Cave in Iraq, around 65,000 years ago. A Neanderthal, not even our species, was found in a spot where researchers detected unusual clusters of flower pollen, hinting the body may have been laid to rest with intention. Even they may have reached for meaning. Jump to La Forêt in France, roughly 70,000 years ago. Neanderthals dug a deliberate pit and placed a body inside, knees drawn up, sheltered from scavengers. Not tossed, positioned. Someone cared where that body would rest forever. Now to Lake Mungo in Australia, about 42,000 years ago. A man was sprinkled with red ochre before burial, carried from somewhere else to that dry lake bed. Ochre had to be traded or hauled for miles, meaning this ritual mattered more than a full stomach. Go to Hohl Fels in Germany, around 40,000 years ago. Carved from mammoth ivory, a tiny lion-headed man, the Lowenmensch, half human, half beast, a creature that exists nowhere in nature. Somebody imagined a god and spent 400 hours making it real. Finish at Çatalhöyük in Turkey, roughly 9,000 years ago. People buried their dead beneath the floors of their own homes, plastered the skulls, and painted them. They slept every night on top of their ancestors. Death wasn't outside the house. It lived under the bed. So why does the human brain do this at all? Why do we, alone among animals, invent invisible watchers? The anthropologist Pascal Boyer, in his 2001 book, Religion Explained, argued something genuinely unsettling. Belief isn't a bug. It's a byproduct of tools your mind already had. Your brain evolved to detect agents, to assume that rustle in the grass is a predator, not the wind. Get it wrong and assume it's the wind, and you're dead. Get it wrong the other way, and you just flinched at nothing. So evolution built us to over-detect minds everywhere. In the storm, in the dark, in the silence. Boyer's point is chilling in its simplicity. The same instinct that kept you alive by imagining a lion behind every bush also made you imagine a will behind every thunderclap. Faith, in other words, may have ridden in on the back of survival itself. And you still do this. Right now, you do it every single day. When your flight hits turbulence and your lips move before your brain catches up, when you knock on wood, when you whisper, please, 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 to no one as the phone rings with test results, when something scares you in the dark and, just for a second, you feel watched. That's not silly. That's not weakness. That's a 300,000-year-old reflex firing in a modern skull. Your ancestors reached into the dark because the dark was full of death. And the ones who reached, who bargained, who hoped, who believed someone was listening, those were the ones calm enough to survive the night and have children. You're descended from the prayers. Every one of them worked at least long enough to make you. So go back to that cold night, the dying fire, the child asleep, the thing breathing in the dark. You look up at the stars you can't name, and you speak. And across 300,000 years, that whisper never really stopped. It carried a red deer's antlers into a grave. It painted forces onto stone. It dragged bodies into pitch-black caves. It carved 13,000 beads by hand. It hauled 20-ton pillars up a hill with no city in sight. It became temples and towns and everything after. Not a plan, not an accident. Just a species too small to fight the dark, learning to speak to it instead. We didn't start praying because we found God. We started praying because we found the dark and refused to face it alone.